Everybody, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Today's webinar, free webinar, I'm excited about this because we're going to talk about the foundation that brands need to be thinking about as you grow and scale. These are the fundamental things that you need to have in place to successfully grow and scale your brand as you're thinking about how to get into new stores, et cetera. And the reason this is important is that a lot of times brands forget the basics. They get so distracted with the everyday, what they need to do, what's in front of them, that they forget that it's that foundational element that you need to have in place, a solid foundation that is going to help you in times of trouble. It's going to help you stay on the right path. And so with that, I've got a couple of really great guys to help me with this. Kevin Weber and then Patrick Weber. Jeff was unavailable. Unfortunately, he's sick under the weather. But we're going to talk about how to build and scale a brand during the era of COVID. The reason this matters so much is that if you can do this effectively during trying times like COVID, it's going to help you grow and scale even more later. So with that said, and let's start by introducing my guest. Kevin, why don't you go first, and then we'll go to Patrick.
My name's Kevin Weber. My brother Patrick and I founded 4 Points Energy Bar here in Denver, Colorado. We launched about almost 6 years ago now, and since have also started a co-packing venture to help other small and medium-sized brands do their R&D runs and small and medium-sized co-pack runs, kind of helping those companies out where we found a bottleneck ourselves when we were starting out.
Can you get into a little bit of, before we get to you, Patrick, or Patrick, unless you want to answer that, what is 4 Points? What makes your bar unique? And I think the reason this matters is because you're not another Me Too brand. So either Patrick or Kevin, whoever wants to take that.
Kevin, take it.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. We're not another Me Too brand. There's plenty of those on the market. Just plain and simply, the market is full of a lot of junk. There's a lot of high glycemic, syrup-based, date-based bars out there. And what those bars do is they cause blood sugar crashing and spiking. They cause gut issues. They don't deliver on the promise of why a person buys an on-the-go nutritional product to begin with. They're just a tasty treat. So we kind of began with the end in mind in creating our product, really trying to focus on what do we need to get out of this. And that's how we founded 4 Points. So it started off as just filling a need in our own backpacks to support our own outdoor endeavors. And it turned into coming up with an innovative solution to a problem in the marketplace, which is there's no low glycemic options that really work to keep your blood sugar balanced and your gut healthy. And we're entering a really fun environment right now where they just reported even last a couple of weeks ago in Forbes magazine that the #1 health and wellness trend going into 2021 is gut health. So we feel like there's a really good opportunity for us. We're kind of ahead of the curve, and things are accelerating now because of COVID. And I think that brings a lot of opportunity for brands like ours.
Sounds good. By the way, I'm interviewing the food and beverage editor for Forbes magazine next week. So I'll make sure I talk to her about that.
Yeah.
Patrick, you want to share your story?
Yeah, Patrick, obviously we're brothers, climbing partners. We were each other's best man at weddings. So we do everything together. So we figured why not start a business together. And yeah, we created the bars for ourselves as we were climbing mountains and skiing and backpacking. And, we got tired of making them for free for everybody. So we decided to give it a shot. And, as Kevin alluded to, why we created, why we put in it what we do with the prunes. And then we, in our journey, trying to fix our manufacturing, shore up our production, we had a bad go round with a co-packer, and that led us to purchasing our own equipment, opening a facility, and offering honest, small co-packing. So that's kind of where we're at, is producing energy bars, protein bars, and doing R&D and co-packing consulting on the side as well.
That's exciting. And I met you guys at the Nourish Festival. So it's been a while since we actually physically met in person. Of course, I can think we can say that about everyone on the call today. But what's neat about what you guys are doing, and just to kind of frame this, I've done a lot of work in the bar category. And I don't think people realize necessarily how competitive, how hyper competitive it is. And the challenge is that anyone and everyone thinks that they can make a bar. And to some degree, that's kind of true. But yet, I've also been an avid outdoor enthusiast. I've done a lot of backpacking, climbing, cycling, etc. And a lot of those products do not fare well when you're camping and hiking and all that other stuff. They don't last. They don't have the shelf life. They don't have the freshness, and they don't provide that sustained energy. And that's really what this is about. When you're doing extreme trail running or stuff like that, then, I would turn to some of the products in my backpack, and they just would not support me. They would not sustain me. And the reason what you have matters is, like you said, low glycemic, the things that fuel your body, kind of the foundation theme again. Can you talk a little bit about why that matters, Kevin, Patrick, whoever wants to take that?
Yeah, I mean, to understand, it's funny. You mentioned the outdoor industry and being an enthusiast yourself, and we always talk about, as outdoor enthusiasts, we always tend to care more about what we put on the outside of our bodies than their inside our bodies. So, I can give you a number. $1,408 is what I spent on my last pair of skis, boots, bindings, jacket, ski pass, and then here's another number, $2. That's the price of 2 Cliff Bars, and you wonder why you're not tearing it up on the mountain, So it just is an example of how people view nutrition, and they don't really put the same emphasis on it. And so to understand what's going on, every time you eat something, it causes, a rise in blood sugar. And if it's super high glycemic, you get a spike, which ensues a crash later. So we decided to begin with the end in mind of what are we really trying to get? We want to get 3 to 4 hours of energy sustained without bonking or hitting that wall. And it's incredibly tied to your gut as well. So we scoured the earth looking for the right ingredients to do this, and really just looking into our pantry, we found a secret ingredient that was low glycemic. It was high in fiber. It had high in prebiotics. It was great for your gut, and it turned out to be nature's perfect endurance superfood, and it's prunes. And most people identify prunes with the legacy functions that they were so good at being known for, which is promoting digestive health and laxation, which, I always kind of joke around if I'm giving a speech, asking for a show of hands of who doesn't want to be good at being regular. And most people kind of pause for a second and think, okay, if I raise my hand, then I'm full of, fill in the blank. So, so there's a challenge using prunes, which is why no one else is using them. But we've really embraced that challenge since day one, and the crowded market, and use that as our main sticking point for standing out. And so we built our product around that unique ingredient, and really, the combination of proteins, carbs, and fats created something that truly takes 3 to 4 hours to digest, really giving you that long-lasting satiety and that energy that is uncompromising, allowing you to do what you love to do and feeling your best. And so that was kind of the end goal that we had in mind, and we were able to achieve that after a number of iterations. So.
Love the way you frame that. My wife was dumbfounded when she found out how much I spent on my mountain bike, which I'm sure everyone on this call would be too. But the point is, it's quality, it's value. And one of the things that frustrates me about this industry is that we don't do enough to celebrate the quality of the food that's in your quality ingredients in your product. And this is something that I struggle with a lot in trying to teach brands like you and everyone on the call today. First of all, I believe that a brand should not have to apologize for quality ingredients in their product. Secondly, trying to re-educate people, consumers, the retailers you work with, on why this matters. And so to your point, if I eat something that burns up quickly in my body, then I don't have the power, the fuel, the whatever you want to call it, to do a 14er. And I've done a lot of 14ers, and they take a lot of work, some of them more than others. And if I don't have that, then I haven't heard that term for quite a while. Bonk. That's where you run out of gas. There's no fuel in the tank, and there's nothing left, or no reserves. But to be able to have that, that's what's critically important. So as you begin to understand not only the brand 4 Points, but more importantly, the co-packer, having a relationship with a co-packer and a brand that understands what your product brings to the market, what your product does for that end consumer, that's critically important. This is why I actually designed my free turnkey sales source strategies course. The idea behind it is we need to do a better job as an industry educating consumers about the real value that we give them. And so to go back to Patrick's example, not to pick on Cliff Bar, but a 10 for $10, which I think is a really bad strategy, pulls a lot of dollars out of the category, et cetera. But that bar is cheap, inexpensive, and it's not going to last me many, many, many hours. So if I pay more for a more premium product that satiates me longer and meets more of my body's needs, then that premium product is actually cheaper in the long run because I ate less of it. And because of the way you guys have built this product, which I think is great, then not only do I eat less of it, I have a more regular, put it that way. I need to stop less often to eat, all that other stuff. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot more to this equation than just it's a cool bar. So with that as the backdrop of everything we talk about, now let's begin talking about what we've been talking about behind the scenes. So the first thing that we decided that we're going to discuss is how do you start? And we talked about how you need to begin with the end in mind. You know, Stephen Covey is the one who really framed that or positioned that. I forget exactly. He said, was it sharpen the saw? I don't know. I'll let you guys bring in the comment.
I know. I'm a fan of Covey's, so yeah.
Yeah, he is. But the way he put it, I mean, it makes so much sense. And, you know, even way back when, you know, the idea that, you know, Lincoln said, you know, you want to sharpen the axe, spend more time sharpening the axe and cutting down the tree. The point being is that this is where strategy makes all the difference. This is where you need to think about where you want to be. Most brands are reactive in the sense that, oh, what are we going to do tomorrow? Oh, we've got an opportunity to promote. Mm-hmm. So when you guys are, when thinking about the end in mind, how do you guys frame that? How do you position that? What's important to 4 Points and to BaseCamp?
Well, I guess I'll start, Pat, and you can add on that. So it seems like a novel concept to begin with the end in mind, and you're right, most brands don't do that, ourselves included. Thinking about everything from where your product's going to live, how you're going to deliver it, who your target consumer is, and ultimately what's your exit strategy if you have one. Most brands are just happy to get off the ground, and it's an exciting journey those first few months when you see your product sitting on a shelf. But, you know, you tend to get there, you know, we've learned from a lot of our mistakes. We don't have a negative relationship with failures because that's how you learn. And it honestly gets you excited about learning how to do things right. And so one of the mistakes that we made off the gate was we had a very strong strategy of building our brand first, growing slow, really hyper-focusing on niche markets where we could communicate our premium benefits and tailoring the message to each specific demographic, and then building that community around our product. And then, like probably what happens with a lot of brands, big grocery or a big opportunity comes, and your eyes, you think this is it. This is our jumping off point, our coming out party. So, and then lo and behold, you get sucked into a game where you get penalized for not knowing what you don't know. And that's, you alluded to a lot of those things like the MCBs, the chargebacks, slotting fees, you know, the game of distribution. And next thing you know, you see all these margin points going out the window, and that opportunity really turned into a big giant distraction because you weren't ready for it. You know, you may have been ready for it from a manufacturing standpoint, but you weren't ready from it from a financial standpoint. And so that was a mistake that we made pretty early on as we were building our brand. And it's more cost effective to build your brand first and then let retail come to you. And that was our strategy, but we got distracted and it ends up costing you a little bit. So I think that's an important thing for all brands to think about when they start off is, what's their strategy how they're gonna, if your goal is to get into retail, how are you going to support those retail sales once you get in there? Because you alluded to 10 for 10 is not a great deal. If you're a brand like Cliff Bar, that's a marketing spend for you. But if you're a small brand like 4 Point, 10 for 10 means you're probably taking sub 20 margins on that product. And really, you're doing that just to show turns. It's just moving product. It's not proving any real quality value. So you have anything you want to add to that, Pat?
I think you hit it pretty good. When you're first starting out, it's easy, I think, to jump ahead to the end, as you put it, and say, this is where we want to go. We want to create a Cliff Bar-like company. Great company, by the way. We're just not, we're burned out on the bars and wanted to offer a healthier option. But, I don't think a lot of people, when you write your business plan, which is a very good exercise, but they hardly ever pan out the way you want them to. And as Kevin had mentioned, we found ourselves getting distracted multiple times, and doing things the hard way with no shortcuts, proves to be a really tough climb. It's climbing the mountain without a trail. And when you're using an ingredient like prunes, you want to think about using an ingredient that not a lot of other manufacturers are using or products are using, keeping in mind that you have a lot of marketing, a lot of information that you need to get out there to really educate people on why this ingredient or why your value proposition is solving the problem. And those are things that your business plan needs to be a living document. And that was one thing at the very beginning that we didn't do. So it's easy for us to look back, and from the co-packing side, we have a unique perspective because we've been there and we've done it. And Dan, as you said, there's a lot of people trying to jump into the bar market, and a lot of people reach out to us, and we do I think a really good job of steering those companies when they're in such a beginning stage or just an idea phase of, visiting their ingredient list. Why are you using this? Why don't you think about real food, where the trends are going? Why don't you think about certain things along the line that, maybe 4 Points has lent its experience to BaseCamp. And, and we also have a pretty good relationship with our co-packers since we have both. But that's about all I can add to that, I think.
Well, I appreciate your sharing that. By the way, I love the climb the mountain without a trail, without a map, without a trail. I know exactly what that is about, or skiing the backcountry where you're not supposed to be, but trying to.
I just trademarked it, so if you want to use it.
No, I think it's great. Well, so let's back up a little bit. You're talking about your business plan, and I'm so glad you guys say this. I've made the comment a lot of times. You can either pay me now or pay me later. It's a lot cheaper now to pay me now, whether you hire me or not. The thought or the idea behind that is that if you do things right from day one, it costs a lot less money for someone like me to come in and clean up the mess. Mm-hmm. And so when your business plan, this is something I focus on a lot in terms of the foundation of every brand. In fact, this is the focus of last week's free webinar. So go back and check it out. But the point is that I believe that your business plan should be so thorough, so robust, so complete that someone else could come in and run your business for you on your behalf, in your absence, flawlessly, without any problems. So it needs to include your trade strategy, your distribution strategy, where you're going to grow sales. What does your core customer look like? Not the generic customer, but your customer, the customer that understands why your product is more valuable to them or more satiates them better, is a better value to them than other products. And by the way, I do think Cliff is a great company. I love their products, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But yet there are times where I will turn to products that will satiate me longer and help me get over those humps. So it's kind of like that commercial where the guy eats a Snickers bar and all of a sudden he's his normal self. That sort of mindset in terms of being able to fuel your body and give your body what it needs so it doesn't crash, bonk, as you guys said. So thanks. So in terms of the go-to-market strategy, thank you for sharing that, because one of the things you mentioned, Patrick, is that the 10 for 10 strategy, large brands have the ability to buy volume, and they pull dollars out of the category. They pull profits out of the category. And the reason that matters is because consumers have been led to believe that that's more important, having cheap stuff, cheap, inexpensive stuff. And the reality is that retailers have thin margins to begin with. And as a group of brands, as an industry, we need to help those retailers understand that we're the ones that are driving profitable sales across every category. We are the brands that are helping them compete more effectively, that are driving more traffic in their store, that are keeping them relevant, meaning keeping brands from going online, customers from going online as much. So that needs to be a part of your go-to-market strategy. And so when you're thinking about your go-to-market strategy, it also needs to include, how do you address each one of those issues? How do you bake that story into your go-to-market strategy and then communicate that clearly across every aspect of your sales funnel? Guys, you want to jump in? Your thoughts? Patrick, you want to start first?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And we hear it all the time is when your brand strategy and how are you selling, how are you going to pitch your product, what makes you a trustworthy, product, what makes you the authority on it. And, I think from our standpoint, and we could always do a better job of it, because I feel like we're pretty humble guys and we don't really talk about the things that we do and the things we know as much as we should. And that's something that brands, I think should really focus on, is you have to put yourself out there and you have to lend your expertise to it. So, Kevin being a sports nutritionist and a personal trainer and a wilderness athlete, that's why he was so good at helping to formulate these ingredients. We had a culinary partner at the beginning who just knew flavors and nuance. And I just kind of rode the magic carpet with him. I was just climbing mountains and doing triathlons. So I was like the guinea pig, helping out where I could. But we back it up. We've climbed all the 14ers. I just climbed Mount Rainier. I use my product daily. I'll eat it for breakfast, even when I'm sitting in a Zoom meeting, all day. So I think the brand strategy is really focus on, why your product is better. What problem are you solving? And why should even that retail buyer trust you? And then you can get into the battle of why they should carry a really small brand with not a lot of marketing dollars to try to compete with the Cliff Bars and the RX Bars of the world. But I think it's great because I think a lot of these smaller natural markets, that's why people go there, is they know they can find really cool, small, artisanal or small company products, and they don't have to walk down the aisle and see the regular players, just the large, big food brands that just sort of dominate the shelf space.
Well said.
Yeah. And I'll pick up the baton where Patrick left that off and kind of echo on some of the stuff we've talked about offline, Dan, which is, we could have an entire conversation or webinar just on how retail is broken. We've seen, there were fissures before COVID, and now they're big giant chasms. And I think we're entering a time right now where the power has never been more with the brand to control their own destiny, as far as communicating who they are, who they're for, the premium nature of their product, and working to get loyal customers and consumers. Retail, in my opinion, has the biggest uphill battle, because they need to provide value again to brands like that. Because we talk about, we all know that the key to category growth in any industry is finding innovative brands that push the envelope, disrupt the market, and bring new ideas. And when you walk into a category, like we'll just pick on the bar category because that's where we're in. You walk in the bar category and like you said in the beginning, a bunch of Me Too products, a bunch of products that are constantly on TPR, a bunch of products that are not providing value. They're just providing turns. So if you're a retail category buyer, is your idea of success just turns? Is that what's growing the category, or is it making margin? Because the retailer is not making anything off of 10 for 10. So, but then when you approach these buyers with a premium product that's going to sit on the shelf like ours at between 279 and 329 as a premium product, they're making more margins, but they're not doing anything to help us stand out or to be really successful. And so I think it's kind of a good strategy to really focus on building your brand and let retail come to you. There are some retail buyers out there that are starting to get it, that they're really good. They review their categories on a regular basis, as opposed to this kind of antiquated once a year, I don't want to touch it, I don't want to think about it. And they're looking at growing that category. And if you look at the bar category, just in October of last year, it was a $5.5 billion category that was still experiencing growth. So there's no wonder why there's new players coming in, but where's that growth? Where's all those new players? If you go into a Whole Foods or a King Soopers or Safeway, you're going to see, 5 or 6 line extensions from the same players, Kellogg's, General Mills, Cliff, you name it. You're not seeing any of these innovative brands that are coming out and doing things differently. And that's because retail's broken. And so I think, the good strategy is pick your niche, own your stripes, be who you are, and keep your dollars and your margins where you can be most effective with it, and let retail, once they start to see, the center store really empty out and the end caps and the end aisles and produce start to, clean their clocks, they'll start thinking about things a little bit differently.
Love the fact you put it that way. By the way, let me back up a little bit. Patrick, I'm impressed. You've climbed all the 14ers. I've only done 38. So
that's a good amount.
Do what?
That's a good amount, 38.
Well, it is. Well, and I started running them when I was younger. So, I mean, back in college.
Now you're showing off, Dan.
No, I know. I love it. But
I've done 42, so I've got or 45. I've got a few left to go to. 45 and 46. I got a few left to go too.
That's it. My goal was to do. I mean, anyhow, we go off on that tangent for quite a while, but no, that's pretty cool. 52. That's in 44. That, by the way, for everyone listening, doing a 14er, that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of work to have that energy to run it. For example, Long's Peak, one of my favorite, I used to be able to do that in 2 hours, and that takes a lot of work. But it's climbing altitude gains, sometimes 3,000 feet, et cetera, and back down. So that's why this matters. So let me get into, thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. When you're talking about innovation, real innovation is what we provide. And one of the reasons why I've been saying that retail is broken, actually a couple reasons. One, because as Patrick said, now we have the power. And what I've been getting at there is that retailers, the myth is that retailers think that they have all the power. The reality is that they need us as much, if not more today than we need them. And the reason for that is that as a consumer, I've got a lot of different choices to where I spend my hard-earned money. And so these strategies we're talking about are rooted in how do you help your retail partner grow sales? How do you help them thrive? How do you help them succeed on your behalf, which is a benefit to all of us. And so with that said, real innovation is what we're providing, dates, et cetera, teaching people why healthy products matter. I did a project for a big legacy, big CPG brand, and they had an energy drink. Put a different label on it, now it's a diet drink. Put a different label on it, now it's a breakfast drink. Now, and my point is 5 different versions of the same thing with different labels, and they call that true innovation, which it's not. And those are the things that pull dollars out of the category. And those are the things that make it difficult for our brands to survive and thrive, because it's that sugar high, pun intended, that retailers are focused on, slotting and all that other stuff. So Kevin, what I was sharing with you is I agree that retail's broken. And the reason retail's broken is because retailers today spend more time trying to get us to buy the stuff on their shelves rather than trying to sell the stuff we want. This is why this matters. So if we can help the retailer understand what consumers really want, what really matters, help them understand how to grow profitable sales by leveraging the strength of our unique customer, that's going to better position them to compete more effectively against their biggest counterparts. Oh, and by the way, if we can help that retailer capture more of the sales in their store, instead of inviting me as a customer to go shop their competition, that's the win-win at the end of the day. So with that as the backdrop, that's the thing we need to be thinking about as we put together our go-to-market strategy, our business plan, et cetera. So the second point that we talked about, Kevin, was go-to-market. We've talked about that a little bit. So how do you guys leverage what we've been talking about as you work with retailers? Kevin, you want to go first this time?
Yeah, so I'll just use ourselves as an example. So we built our product for ourselves and for our needs in the outdoors. Also drawing on our inspiration from our family's fight with diabetes. And so we said this is how we're going to build our brand. We're going to focus on the outdoor channel, not on conventional retail or natural organic. And so we felt by doing that, one, we were able to avoid the slotting fees, able to avoid some of the things that, big grocery is notorious and famous for beating small brands over the head with. And we started going after places like ski resorts and golf courses and climbing gyms. And we really focused on REI being our number one customer. And that was our strategy in the beginning, our go-to-market strategy. And it worked really well. We were able to keep up more margins. We were able to go DSD or direct drop ship with a lot of them. And for people that don't know what that means, and avoid the middleman. And that worked for a really long, good time. I always pride myself on the vendor relationship we had with REI. I look at that as a perfect example of how a retailer should embrace a vendor and how a vendor in return embraces the retailer to grow sales. And we did that, I think, pretty successfully in REI. And but then after a while, people start to see you at events at places like REI, and they say, "Where else are you being carried?" Because you realize that people aren't skiing every day, they're not shopping at REI every day, and so they want to find you in places where they're at. And so that goes back to the $1 million question: is putting your product where your consumers are. Well, outdoor enthusiasts buy stuff in natural organic, and they buy stuff in grocery, and so naturally, when Safeway came calling, we couldn't say no. And same thing with natural grocers. And then next thing you know, that leads you down the path. And so I think there's nothing wrong with going down that path. However, I think that you have to be in a healthy financial position to understand the rules of that game, because most brands don't understand all the rules of engagement when it comes to dealing in natural organic and with big distributors like a UNFI and how that impacts your business. And the next thing you know, you get distracted and you forget about your old pal REI and how they were the ones that gave you your shot, and which we never did. We always made REI our biggest focus all the time. So that was one thing that's one thing I could say we've always done right. So, but I think that's really important with your go-to-market strategy is to think about where your product lives, your target consumer, and then you have your secondary consumer or where else they shop that you can focus on after you've found success in that first go round.
Patrick, you want to throw in any thoughts?
I think he cleaned up pretty good there. He, mentioned choosing, a great partner. And the thing that REI was for us was that legitimacy to get in to some of these larger grocers. But yeah, I would say that make sure you're in the right headspace and you're in the right time in your business to venture into giant retail, into big distribution, and seek out, help from, Dan. Because if we would have had some information, about how to follow that path at the beginning, we probably could have saved ourselves a lot of headaches, a lot of money. But experience is a great teacher also, and hopefully, you're smart enough that you can learn from those and bounce back. So yeah, we've had some bumps and bruises along the way in that, but definitely be prepared for everything to come at you when you start venturing into the big food world.
I appreciate your saying that. In fact, your point earlier, I forgot to mention that avoiding mistakes. That's why I do this. That's why the podcast, 206 episodes live. And that's why I've got the YouTube channel and all the courses. And that's why I'm partnering, looking for other people to partner with, including on this free webinar series where I'm trying to answer those questions to help brands avoid those problems so that, that pay me now, pay me later thing I was talking about earlier, so that you can confidently grow and scale your brand and not waste so darn much money. So you're
Yeah,
talking
and
about,
I'll even add to that, Dan. No, that's all right. Sorry, I just don't want to forget. I'll add to that the one of the best parts about growing slow and having that smaller go-to-market strategy is that you're going to make mistakes. And
yes,
so those mistakes that you make are minimized on a smaller level that maybe don't penalize you as if you jump into Safeway. I'll mention Bobo's, or like I personally, or not even Bobo's, but there's some other brands out there that you go to market and you jump way ahead of the game, and little things come up that you would probably say, oh man, if that had not happened on such a large scale, it wouldn't cost us so much. So, we found that out as well, and that goes back to your foundation of a business plan. Like, it is a living document, and as much as you try to shore it up, it's just like a house. Eventually it's going to need new windows and a new door, and you just want to make sure that you're not overextended when you have to replace that door.
well said. And on that note, just give you a couple quick examples for people to really understand why this matters. And thank you for sharing all that. So you got the push strategy versus the pull strategy. The push strategy is the shut up, sit down, and get out your checkbook strategy that everyone else uses with the cookie cutters, tactics, etc. That's why we're doing this, to avoid that. The pull strategy is where you have people reaching out to you saying, how can I get you? And if you can position yourself well enough and you've got the go-to-market strategy, not only can you negotiate with potential investors more effectively, but then you can push back on retailers and say, you know what? I'm not going to pay slotting because I understand that my customer is far more valuable to you as a retailer than the customer, than the other brand's customer. Because your customer drives more traffic in their store, reasonable profit in the category, a bigger market basket ring. These are some of the things I talk about through the courses and podcasts, et cetera. So go back and check those out, or reach out to me if you've got more questions. But a quick story, there's a brand that I'm working with that is in California, just got distribution. Well, it just got taken on by a distributor. She's thrilled, right? So they put her product in Florida. They put her product in Indiana. They put her product in Louisiana. She's in California. So how is she going to support that brand effectively in those retailers? She's not. It's a recipe for failure. It's a recipe for going bankrupt down the road. If you're not thinking about your go-to-market strategy, where do you need to go? How do you need to get there? Another quick story, working with another brand, an energy bar. She has to keep her what's the term I want to put it? Her all-in cost, her cost to get the product on a shelf, in the package, everything else, down at 80 cents a bar to be able to sell it for $3.99. There is no margin of error for her. There is no money that's basically her kind of breaking even with all the people that have their hand out, the distributors, the brokers, et cetera, and everyone else. My point is, having these strategies like you guys have talked about in place are what are going to help you navigate that so that you can decide where do you want to go, how do you want to get there. So she's in a position where she wants to be organic, but she's being told by her investors not to be organic because they want their money. But yet that takes her away from her mission. Same as with you guys. If you guys were told that, hey, you need to not use dates, you need to use high fructose corn syrup or something like that, which is against everything you're talking about, why does it matter? And how do you position yourself around that? So thank you for sharing that. By the way, this is exactly why I put together, this is exactly what I proved in the 2016 Category Management Handbook, that our products are responsible for all the sustainable growth across every category. So leverage the insights in that. There's a link to it on the podcast webpage as your part of your go-to-market strategy. So the next thing we talked about, and I know we're kind of spending a lot more time talking about the foundational part, which is good, is so what does that look like? So what does that mean? So where to invest, your website, affiliate programs, influencers, how do you drive traffic to your site, your approach, et cetera. Guys, you want to share what you do first, Patrick?
Yeah. So that brings up a whole lot of things that, that we didn't do at the beginning. And that's why I think we have a pretty good insight on this, is that you gotta win your customers one at a time when you start. And, farmers markets, local shops, your Facebook, your Instagram, all those things are so important when you're going to market, because you want to build up that, that energy around your product, and that people will get excited and see what your brand's all about. Because, in any food category, a big food company can look at your product and say, I like that product. Let's go break it down and make our own. And they could do that. Kellogg's could do that to you tomorrow, and there's nothing you could do to stop them. But people don't necessarily buy that. People buy the story, they buy your brand, they buy into you. And that's what's so important, is to show your consumers, show your fans who you are, what you're about, what your product is for, why you made it, and what makes you the leading authority on that. And I think that was something that we started with and we got away from, but we've gotten back to it, and it pays dividends. So being true to yourself and just putting yourself out there and being okay with one battle at a time, one customer at a time, having conversations with individual people, commenting. That's not necessarily, the technological tools that you'll put into it, but that's like the mindset, that we have. As far as driving traffic to the site, I think it's smart to dig into, the analytics of Facebook and learn, dabble a little bit in Facebook ads. They have a lot of great resources for free that you can learn that, and you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at the start. You can spend $10 and learn what works. Learn about the people out there that have never heard about you, that have questions about your product, and engage with that person, and that helps you learn in return. That's sort of where we've been going lately.
Good. Kevin, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like we alluded to earlier. I think it's easier, when you get that first purchase order from a large retailer and you see all the deductions, and you sit there and you think, wow, that $1,500 invoice just came back at $738. You start thinking about the balance there and thinking, what did we miss? If we had taken that and reinvested that into Google ads or Facebook ads, or things that drive traffic to your site, affiliate programs, would you have been able to stretch those dollars more? And the answer is always going to be yes. So it's, like Patrick said, like if you stick with your story, which is what endears you to people, and your brand is what attracts you to people. And if your product's good, then you've got the recipe for winning over consumers. And then you just have to follow through with it. I think a lot of brands, the other problem that a lot of brands have too, is that in the beginning, the founders are doing so much work within the business, they're not working on the business. And that's a challenge. It's a real thing. It's not skirting. It's not saying you're trying to get too big by saying you don't want to jump into the dish pit and do dishes because you have to. But if you're doing that, then you're not doing something else. And so it does take a while. There's a learning curve in it, but some of those things you just have to do and you have to dig into, and we're all guilty of it. But small brands, you have to dig in, and you have to do the small things, like just respond. People reach out to you on social media. You got to take the time to engage with them. It's easy to just do your posts and then turn it off and go away. But engaging with one person leads to maybe, turning them into one of those Seth Godin type sneezers that then tell 100 people. He's another one of my favorites, along with Covey. But those are the things in the beginning that it's easy to jump ahead to and forget about, and then stop doing because you get distracted with the big shiny PO of, getting into 100 stores, So I think just keep, like we've been talking about, just focus on your website, it's your storefront. E-commerce is here to stay. It's been growing. I think in October, they said that 19% was the growth projection for e-commerce brands before COVID, especially in the bar category. I imagine that's probably grown since COVID. So it's definitely worth more money to focus inward than to focus outward.
Thanks for saying that. And the real thing that pushed me over the edge when I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to do this was when Expo West was canceled. I listened to brand after brand after brand through social media, LinkedIn, et cetera, talk about how they're going to fire their staff or let their staff go, their team. And I thought, no, don't do that, because you spend a lot of time finding the right person, training them, grooming them, et cetera. And they took something off your plate so you could be more effective. Like you were saying, founders work way too hard. So there's an inefficiency to that. And they're thinking about laying those people off. And I'm thinking, don't do that. Let's think about other ways to find the money to survive. And a lot of that is in the trade marketing, is by making sure you're focused on the right customer, getting the right distribution in the right stores, all the stuff we're talking about. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things that you said, Patrick, you were talking about that, yeah, other brands could copy what you've got, because let's face it, our recipe is pretty much on our package, right? But the difference is the trust. And as both you guys were talking about, it's that relationship that you have with your buyer that makes your product so unique. So what do I mean by that? I believe that every brand, every brand needs to be available wherever your customers shop, meaning that you need to have a digital presence. You need to be able to leverage your digital presence, your community, to grow sales within a retail store. The power of that in terms of negotiating with retailers is something that a lot of brands overlook. So if you can go to a retailer and say, here's who buys my product and here's why they buy it, et cetera, this is how you grow and succeed. I did a project many, many years ago for Dang Chips when they were starting out, where I had them do an informal Facebook study. It was not scientifically accurate and it wasn't scientifically valid. But what we did is we took some of the comments from their Facebook community, their loyal community, and I baked that into the selling deck that I put together for them. They went from only a few stores to every store within the chain, 1,600 stores. They went from being regional to a national, a much larger brand, and they just blew up overnight. And the point is, by leveraging the strength of all of these assets that we're talking about, this is how you gain a significant and sustainable competitive advantage. And back to what you said, Kevin, the mistakes that you guys make sometimes, I made them too. I had the wrong email service provider, the wrong website. I grew my list to be huge, and because I didn't have the infrastructure to support it, I lost it. I didn't have the infrastructure to support the courses. So now that I finally have all that in place, we're doing what we're doing today. But as a brand, having you take a step back, I mean, think about all the things I should have done differently myself. And if I can help you and help other brands not make that mistake, why we're having this conversation, that's what this is about. That's what's important. So thank you for sharing that. So I know we're kind of bumping up a little bit on time. The next thing we want to talk about is the co-pack relationship. So why did you guys decide to have a co-packer? By the way, that's a huge investment. Hats off for you guys for doing that. That's a pretty risky thing for a small brand. But why did you do that? And what does it mean to have a relationship with a co-packer that is yourself?
Wow, great question. So the quick version of the story was, and I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, was that manufacturing is always a headache when you're trying to get out there, and it's, at the beginning you're under cottage food laws depending on where you're at, so you're doing things in your kitchen, you don't know the ropes, you don't know what you're doing. Food safety is like, hey, I clean my countertops, so at the very beginning there's a lot that you don't know, and we had to find our way through that. And as we started to grow and started to realize, hey, you know what, we can only roll out 200 to 300 bars every 5 to 6 hours. This is not sustainable. This is not a plan. And so we started looking at co-packers, and most of the time co-packers look back at you and go, you're how big? They don't want to even have the conversation if you're not at a million plus revenue, or you're not doing 20 to 30,000 per SKU in a run. And that's big. That's big food. And most companies, most small businesses, it's really hard for you to kind of see out that far and think, wow, that's a lot of units. What would we do with all that? So we finally found one that was willing to take a chance on us. And, we spent about 6 months learning, integrating, kind of learning the process, sitting there with them, getting the recipe, dialed in on the machinery. And as we placed our first order, they went out of business. And it turns out they were always planning on shutting down operations. And so we felt, tricked, and we were really in a bad spot, because now production shut down. We've lost retailers at this point. And we had just pulled in a little bit of friends and family money that we were going to use to market, to tradesmen, to get the word out. And we took all that money and we bought equipment. And the reason we did that was because we were tired of manufacturing holding us hostage. And we decided, hey, we had 6 months crash course boot camp at this co-packer, which was run by great people, not at the very top, but the people in the plant. And we learned how to run that equipment while we were there. And we found a brilliant food scientist in Boulder that allowed us to park our equipment there and worked with us. She was great. And then we found our own spot. And then we thought, you know what? We're not using all of our equipment all the time. And if you have all this expensive equipment in this expensive facility and it's not running, you're losing money. So there was definitely a financial reason behind it, but also, we saw how much of a struggle it was to jump from a commercial kitchen or your kitchen to professional food manufacturing. And we had so many mistakes and so many successes along the way that we got so good at learning, at the food system and the production and the food safety. And we thought, why can't we help other small brands as we pay it forward, and while we go and grow our own brand? And that's why we're in it.
Patrick locked up.
I guess I'll pick up where he left off. I don't know what happened to him. So no, he's right. That's why we're in it. I mean, as we're all in this together, we're collaboration. There's always been 3 pillars to our business, both the co-packing and 4 Points, which is being authentic, being transparent, and then collaborating. And one of those collaboration things is helping other small businesses. And because, you help a small business out, make their product. They might have a friend who's a retailer, or, we're all in this together. Everyone's got to eat. So that's why we do it. And that makes it easy to have that relationship with a co-packer when it's you. Yeah. But it's also, when you go back to one of your foundation points about your product, when you first start out, the number one thing that you have to do above the glitz and the glamour of how great your product is your cost of goods and your margins. And if your cost of goods are high and your margins are too low, you're gonna get clobbered. And then you have to go back and redo it again. And it's really expensive. And now you're going back to retailers and you're raising the price on them, and then that goes over badly. So you really have to have your manufacturing down to it. It's got to be a very, very strong pillar. And that's why we did it, because we knew that as long as we had that leg to stand on, then we had margin, we had scalability. And at that point, it's just grow sales and make sure that the phone's ringing.
Good. Patrick, you want to come back in since you
I think I knew where you were going. So
I don't know where it froze out, but this is just another one of the challenges that come at you, right? In the new 2020 way of doing business, a way of life.
Well, it's okay. We had plenty of time to talk about you behind the You'll have to watch the replay. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, the reason I want to go one step further with this to really dig into this is because, and I know, again, that we're running up on time, is that a lot of the co-packers, a lot of the organizations that you're working with as a brand look at you as an ATM machine, as a paycheck, whatever you want to call it. But having a relationship with people that understand your business That's what I try to do. Understanding, having a co-packer that you're working with that tries to understand your business, having a relationship with a packaging supplier, with a marketing company, whatever it is, that sets you apart from other brands. And that helps you avoid some of those pitfalls, some of those mistakes, some of those failures that so many brands fall into. And the reason this matters is because if they're able to work with you and help you get from a small batch to a large batch to a whatever, that helps them down the road. Can you imagine, for example, if you were a small co-packer and you took a chance on, say, RX Bar or Cliff Bar or whatever, and where you'd be today if you had that initial relationship with them? Pick a brand, insert any brand in there. The point is, imagine where you'd be today. So gambling on a brand like you in the beginning, where you don't have the volume, you don't have everything in place, that takes a lot for a co-packer, and that's why they have those minimums in place, because they don't want to be stuck. So you guys being able to help other small brands and being able to appreciate what you bring to the table, this is something that brands need to be thinking about. So at the very least, I encourage any brand to have a conversation with you guys to at least see what you're capable of doing on their behalf. So again, we're coming up on the hour. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about how to find out more about 4 Points and BaseCamp, and we'll go from there. Kevin, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, if you want to find more out about 4 Points, you can just go to 4pointsbar.com. Don't go to 4points.com. That takes you to the Sheraton, unless you want to go stay at a hotel somewhere, which, yeah, you can go to our website. We're very active on social media. We actually do a lot of blogs. Most of our blogs actually center around the journey of entrepreneurship and mentorship and trying to get things right. We try to take the lessons that we've learned in business and be very vocal with it, because like you said, it's very important. Like Patrick said, like you start talking to somebody who is a co-packer like us, and we start talking to you about your market strategy. Most co-packers don't do that. They don't think about what your end game is. And a lot of times they'll go, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. Most co-packers are just they're the one stop, you just, here's your product, this is what it's going to cost, is the MOQ, come back to us when you're ready. So we try to be very active blogging and helping people out. But you can go to 4pointsbar.com. You can find our product there. You can find it on Amazon. It's very easy to buy from us. 2 days shipping. You'll love our product. Patrick can talk more about how you can get in touch with us for BaseCamp Pro-Pack.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and then one more point on 4 Points is it's just 4 Points Bar on Facebook and at 4 Points Bar Instagram. We're pretty active on there. We're always sharing our adventures. So if you want to see us standing on top of mountains and things like that, we're always posting stuff like that. We're talking about why, we think that our product is above the rest. And for BaseCamp, it's just basecampcopack.com. It's Patrick at basecampcopack.com or Jeff, my partner, who couldn't be here. Again, an email, there's contact info on the site. We'll answer questions all day. We'll just have conversations, because we're not just a production house without the frills. We bring the frills. We call ourselves BaseCamp for a reason, because every great adventure starts from BaseCamp, and that's where all your resources are. And you can go up the mountain as high as you want, and we're there to provide you with that. So we're transparent. We're always going to tell you what we think, if we like your product, or if there's room for improvement. And we're always going to try to steer you on the right path, no shortcuts, real food. So we're going to take the things that we apply in 4 Points, what makes our product great there, and we're going to offer that same service that we give ourselves to other brands that come calling. And like I said, even if it's just an idea to somebody who just needs to switch co-packers, which we get a lot of those calls too. So basecampcopack.com, and we're starting to get the social media going on that side a little bit, but not a ton of time for that.
Well, thanks for sharing. This is why we do this. This is what makes natural. We're all in this together, and we're trying to help each other out. I know we're over the hour, so if you need to drop off, that's fine. You'll be able to listen to the recording on YouTube after a while, and eventually I'll put this on a podcast. I don't do that for every show, but this is important, and this really matters a lot. Again, trying to provide value to this industry. Gentlemen, what bottleneck do you have that I can help solve?
Our, I think I think we're all in the same discovery game right now. The biggest bottleneck right now is how do you, with so many brands now discovering the value of direct to consumer e-commerce, how do you drive traffic to your site? It's largely a pay to play model, you know, with the advertisements and all those kind of things. And then how you parlay that into retail, because we're not gonna change and solve the problems with retail overnight. You know, that's gonna have to come from within various retail channels. There's great retailers out there that are very innovative and ahead of the game, like the Dwight Richmonds at the Fresh Market, who I think after Expo West was canceled, he did something that no other buyer I've ever seen has done, which was he went out on LinkedIn and he started taking 20-minute interviews with companies that wanted to pitch their products. There was a vetting process, of course, but that's an example of a retailer who's understanding the environment that we're in right now and understanding that things have to change. So, but until everybody gets that way, retail's a long play. So the biggest value is how do we grow as a small brand, direct to consumer, increase traffic to our site, make ourselves so appealing that retail comes to us and wants to deal with us on our terms.
Great question. I love this question. Okay, first, your homework, everybody. Take the free turnkey sales store strategies course. It's free. Take it. The reason for that is that this helps you identify who that unique consumer is that buys your product. Not female, head of household, 2.3 kids, college educated, right? Everyone else says that. This is who our customer is, very commoditized. Instead, get to know your customer. We've spent a lot of time talking about ourselves. Now you know me better. And so now you would know better how to market to me as an individual, right? Someone who likes to ride a nice mountain bike, do a lot of I put a lot of miles on it. But the point is, what does your unique customer look like? Where do they live? How do they buy your product? How do they use your product after they take it home? That's what's in that course. It's about that discovery piece, right? The next thing, I cover some of the foundational pieces. What is syndicated data like? What does shopper data look like? What are the things you need to know? Because a one-size-fits-all strategy does not work for you. A little side note, if you want to know how well your brand is doing in the natural channel in Denver, Colorado, there is no database on the planet that will answer that question. And yet you're led to believe that there are several solutions out there. That is not true, okay? So what does that mean? Why does that matter? So you don't waste money on things that aren't going to help you. Next thing, as you understand your core customer, where do they shop? How do you get distribution, et cetera? And then the most important thing about that course, the main premise behind it, is that if I tell you a story and you tell someone else and they tell someone else and so on, by the time that story comes back around to me, it's unrecognizable. This is literally the Achilles heel of every brand. This is how I was able to push around P&G and Frito in my earlier life as a category management expert. The point being is that your sales story, your brand story needs to resonate across every aspect of your sales funnel. Everyone's got to have the same passion, enthusiasm, and authenticity as when you tell your story. Now, that's the foundational stuff you need to have in place. So now to answer your question, if you've got that healthy foundation in place and you're developing a robust, rich community, committed community online, then you can leverage that community to drive sales anywhere you need them to be. If you had, for example, a robust community in Denver, Colorado, and you could say, you know what, we'd like to get into King Soopers. We need you to please go into King Soopers and say, where is my 4 points bar? Okay. So eventually King Super says, aha, a lot of people want this. What is this product? And they reach out to you. Then you can go to them and say, you know what? we're not going to pay slotting because we're a small brand, and we're going to do more to value. We're going to add more value to you as a brand in terms of the value we bring into the customer, into your store. So what I mean by that, retailers want three things. They want more traffic in their store, they want a reasonable profit, and they want a competitive advantage in their market. So in lieu of slotting and some of the other ridiculous fees that they charge, now you can go to them and say, here's what our customer looks like. Here's how they shop your store. When they buy our product, here are the other things they buy when they buy our product. Therefore, our customer is far more valuable than the other products that you're selling. And by the way, retailers don't have access to this level of insights. This is why they need brands like you willing and able to step up and become a category leader, helping them drive sales, okay? So once you've got that in place, now we're leveraging the pull strategy, where retailers are pulling you into their stores. In terms of your go-to-market strategy, when you're working with different retailers or online community, et cetera, now you've got your robust community. And when you can leverage your robust community, your online community, you can also use that to maximize your trade marketing. So you get more runway when you go to retail. You could reach out to your online community and say, you know what? We're going to come out with a banana or a chocolate. Which one would you want? What would you buy? What do you think about that? Or you could give me an additional incentive to buy that product because I'm one of your core fans, part of your tribe, over and above what you'd give someone in the store. So there are ways to save money there too. That's why the trade marketing piece is so valuable. I know Kevin had to drop off. I see that he's gone. Patrick, any questions, any thoughts?
I think that's all great. And I, to anybody listening, I think it's important to seek out, advice and ask questions from individuals like yourself who've been there. And I always tell our internal team, and I tell other brands when they call, or other brands when we're talking, as 4 points is the great John Wooden always said that, if you don't have the time to do it right, when are you going to find the time to do it over? Well, and I think that's at the beginning, you're almost intimidated. And I think, what you're doing is great, because I think you can ask the questions and you can reach out and you can learn so much, and you've put it out there, and a lot of it's free, and it's all right there at your fingertips, so that you can avoid the mistakes, as you said. And that's great. And I think the advice that you just gave about how to create that buzz around your product, how to get your consumer motivated to spread the word about you to retailers, is exactly the strategy. And I don't think, I know for a fact that 4 points got away from that in the middle, as we just got pulled into this grandeur of, we get to be on big store shelves, and it's hard to turn those giant POs down of $30,000, $40,000, but then when you get paid and you realize that you didn't get paid $30,000, $40,000, then you start to realize, okay, we saw the shiny light and we flew to it, and we should have taken a bigger, broader look at it and stuck with our core consumer and gone that way. So I can tell you from experience that what you just said is exactly the way to do it. And the other path is not exactly a great path to take, but it was one that we did and we learned, and now we're back on the right path, I think. So.
Well, congratulations. Again, thank you guys for coming on. I appreciate that. Quick note, Eric Skay was on a while back, and he called his wife, and his wife said, hey, I've got good news and bad news. He said, the good news was that we sold $19,000 worth of stuff. The bad news is that they got a check for $12.34. Ouch. So, yeah, can you imagine? Anyhow, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Let me know what I can do to help support you. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and for those of you who stayed on even longer. Again, I will be putting this out on YouTube sometime, hopefully later today. And then also the podcast episode will be out in a couple of weeks, so look for that. This kind of information is so valuable that this is why I want to put this information out the way I do. Again, not everything is going to be put on the YouTube or the podcast, but you're always welcome to go back and listen to and watch previous free webinars or check out any of the content. So thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks for having us, Dan. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks. Yeah, and tell Kevin good luck with the daycare.
Well, he needs it.
A toddler. So anyhow, thanks.
All right. Take care.
Bye.